Everyone, welcome to Manufacturing Hub on this Wednesday afternoon. Hopefully, if you guys are watching this live, you're trying to find someplace to stay cool because I feel like it's a heat wave across the entirety of North America at this point. So super excited on our side to go continue the conversation on robotics. A couple of notes for the listeners: if you guys are interested in robotics and you didn't listen to episode 214 with Sean Dotson, please go ahead and check that out. It is, if you're watching live, it is available on wherever you're watching it from. It's also available on YouTube or just Google Manufacturing Hub 214 with Sean Dotson. And then beyond that, we actually have a second episode from the coverage that Vlad and I had at Automate earlier this year, coming out tomorrow afternoon at 1 o'clock East Coast time. That's 7 o'clock Central European time and 11 a.m. 11 a.m. West Coast time, which should be fun. So you guys go check that out with Chris and Anne-Marie, where we talk about manufacturing resilience. It was a fun conversation and a really good lead up of everything you guys should be able to expect from that continued coverage. Having said that, if you guys are new here, welcome. If you've been here before, welcome back. If you were longtime listeners, you might have remembered the previous episode that we had with Pawel at some point last year going and talking about robotics. But if you guys are new here, we love to have fun. We love to go ahead and bring conversations up in chat. Sometimes we're able to go answer all of those questions. And if you guys drop questions in the comments, we'll do our best to answer them, Vlad, myself, or hopefully ask Pawel. I will say, sometimes, especially on the technical side of conversations, the questions get slightly too technical to be able to reasonably go ahead and answer during our 75-minute show. And so if that happens, we'll go ahead and do our very best to go answer them after the show. Having said that, and without further ado, everyone, welcome to Manufacturing Hub. My name is Dave Griffith. This guy up here is Vlad Romanov. This is episode 215. We're talking all about robotics. We'd like to welcome Pawel back to the show. Pawel, welcome back to the show. Thank you so much for joining us.
Yeah, likewise. Thank you.
Thank you so much for taking the time to talk to us today, Pawel. I think it's going to be a very interesting episode. There was a lot of very positive feedback on the previous conversation we've had with you. So before we, I guess, dive into the actual technical conversation, could you ask you to introduce yourself, please, for those who have not seen the previous episode?
Sure. So my name is Pawel. So I'm the owner of the YouTube channel Future Robotics. So some of you might know me from my YouTube channel where I educate regarding robotics, especially Fanuc KUKA. And yeah, I've been in the industry for over a decade right now. I started in 2011. And throughout my career, I learned a lot of things about robotics, including end-of-arm tool designs, the processes that the robot can do, and the capabilities of the industrial robots. And I'm happy to chat about that today.
Awesome. Thank you so much. And I would say, the robotics industry, I would say, is different from, I want to say, PLCs and HMI and SCADA systems, but plays a very crucial role for every single manufacturer, right? Even very process-oriented and sort of batch processing type of manufacturers still have robotics in terms of packaging or palletizing. So I don't think that there's any manufacturer that could not be benefiting from robotics in 2025, right? So I think it's very important to understand the nuances. There's a lot of different advancements, and we'll get into that in just a moment. But let me ask you, I guess, a question on the traditional robotics, right? When I say traditional, I mean just the arm moving something from point A to point B. You've mentioned to me that there's quite a few changes, or I guess that are being rolled out or planned out on the Fanuc, KUKA, ABB, and I guess all the other arms. Like, could you expand on that thought a little bit?
Sure. So I think, honestly, everything was kind of, I would say, triggered with the new ISO that's coming out and the cybersecurity requirements for the industrial robots. I think for those who ever work on the industrial robots, they are probably aware that from the start, they were not really prepared to be connected to a network that can have an outside reach. So like you could not really remote into the robot and so on. And as the tech progresses and we want to collect more data, I think the change was needed. And I think that's why the new ISO change was triggered. And that also triggered the manufacturers to change a little bit the robot cabinets and like how the robots are going to maybe not look like, but how the robots are going to behave in the future. And yes, pretty much all of the major brands, which includes KUKA, ABB, Fanuc, and others, are required to change their software to be more resilient for the cybersecurity reasons. And of course, with that, I guess they said, okay, if we're doing the change, let's change a little bit more, so we're able to give even more to the users. So when it comes to, I'm going to speak maybe about Fanuc and KUKA mainly. So when it comes to Fanuc, basically what happened is they are introducing a new cabinet, R-50iA. So that's the newer generation. So basically what they've done, they shrink the cabinet a little bit for it to be a little bit smaller, a little bit more energy efficient, and a little bit more powerful than the previous ones. And there is quite a lot of perks that comes with it, because usually if there is a cabinet change, there'll be some software change that allows us to do a little bit more with the robots than what we used to. And when it comes to Fanuc, what they've done, something that's going to be very useful, and I'm sure many of the users will be very happy, they added new Ethernet ports to the robot. So now the robot is going to have up to 4 Ethernet ports. And if I remember correctly, they will be able to integrate Profinet through the existing Ethernet port. So before we need to have a separate board to connect the Profinet, and right now that should be basically just a software change, kind of like it is in KUKA. So I think
Gotcha.
that's a big plus. Additionally, what's going to happen is they are introducing a new camera with a lightning built into the camera and with a single cable. So that means instead of having a separate cable for the camera, separate cable for the lightning, now everything is going to be introduced into one cable and into one solution. So it's a little bit easier to mount the camera and use Fanuc IR vision. The camera is also a little bit new with the higher resolution, so we'll be able to take better images. And lastly, probably the thing that's most interesting about the Fanuc is they're going to introduce Python into the programming language. So we'll be able to use basically Python code on the robot without using external computer.
Very interesting. Let me ask you, I guess, a follow up on that side, right? So I guess I've worked on a couple of robotics applications, and my side was usually, extracting some of the data and being able to pass some of the data to the FANUC, right? Like checks, for example, when cases were in place or things of that nature. Is it now easier? I guess, do you anticipate it being easier with Python to connect to robotics than it was before? Like, what does the data exchange look like? Because for me, as you've mentioned, it almost seemed like it was very disjointed pieces of, again, machinery that operated through like sensors and vision systems, but it was not really meant to be part of, like, to say, the SCADA, the MES, and ERP type of tools.
Correct. That's a very valid point. I think the industry is shifting more into data collection and data analytics. As we have the AI, all of the language models that we probably want to train on maintenance, or on predictive maintenance, and everything that can help to build faster and be more efficient in the production lines. So extracting the data probably was something that also made the move towards being able to collect the data easier. And currently, I've done a few projects where I integrated Python with Fanuc robots. And it is not the hardest thing to do, but it was not the most efficient way how it could have been done. And now I think they basically opened this to a broader audience. So like someone that might not really know how to integrate currently Python and industrial robots, basically that's going to be kind of like it's not really drag and drop solution, but it's going to be more like, okay, make the code, somewhat put on the robot, and then you can communicate with something that you set up in the Python code. Instead of trying to figure it out, okay, how do I now communicate with the current robot through the existing networks?
Let me ask you, I guess, another question before I pass it on today. So, an interesting, I guess, like shift in our industry, and I can give you the example of Rockwell, right? They are, I guess, trying or are rebranding themselves as more of a software company than hardware, even though, obviously they make anything from MCCs down to PLCs and sensors. Are you seeing a similar shift? Because I would say, UR has certainly a lot more software offers than, let's say, Fanuc and KUKA from my external perspective. Are you seeing them also try to offer like more tools for, you mentioned maintenance, but there's obviously like third parties doing, let's say, remote control. Are they also trying to play in those markets in your opinion?
Yes, actually, very nice that you asked and you mentioned remote control. So one more thing that Fanuc is adding to their scope with the R-50iA is now you'll be able to take your phone and connect your phone with a USB to the robot, and that will allow Fanuc to pull diagnostic data. So you don't have to you still have to call them, but it's going to be kind of like they won't require you for a remote connection, but you're going to use your phone to maybe collect and send the data through the app. Again, that's why the cybersecurity ISO is coming in. I think they're trying to protect everything as much as they can to what can be exposed. So, if I were to guess, probably they are, when you connect your phone, it's not going to really connect to the robot, but it's going to pull some data that's being stored on the robot. That'll be my guess. Like I don't think giving like a full access through the phone is going to be super safe, maybe. But
Maybe
I
it's like a
think,
Bluetooth connection, right?
yeah.
Something like very like local.
Well,
Okay.
they said USB. So like if you
Okay.
go to Fanuc website and listen, it's just a USB connection between your phone and the robot. So, that's again a shift forward towards being able to troubleshoot more faster and be more efficient in programming.
Understood.
Interesting. I was going to say on the Siemens side, they have NFC on their new S7 1200 G2, where you can just go tap and then through the application, you can go pull the diagnostic information. So I think it's interesting, and I'm happy that it's easier to go ahead and start pulling the. I'm happy that it's easier to go start pulling some of that troubleshooting. I do want to touch on the Cobot side again, but before I do that, Pablo, you gave us like honestly enough updates that we could go spend 3 hours talking about just the updates, like one by one. But can you give us? Is there one update that you are the most excited about, or maybe one on the KUKA side, one on the Fanuc side, that you are most excited about that the listeners at home should keep in mind?
Sure. When it comes to me, it will be programming side. So from the Fanuc side, I would say the most exciting is every time they come up with a new cabinet, the power, the power of the calculations of the robots is increasing and the performance of the robot is increasing. So the robots most likely will be able to calculate more accurate paths. You'll be able to move the robot more accurately and execute its actions more accurately. And that has been, at least in my experience, there was a huge change, especially for Fanuc when they switch between each controller version. And I think that's something that I'm really looking forward. And the second probably is the Python integration, just because I'm curious how that's going to look like when they roll it out. I don't want to take too much time going into the updates for KUKA, but let me maybe say a few things. So with KUKA, actually the update is pretty significant and huge because they kind of redesigned the entire robot cabinet. So it's going to look nothing like what you've seen before. Now it's going to be a super slim cabinet that's kind of a plug and play solution. So basically, if you have a PC at home, you can think of a PC that's going to control the robot. And if something goes wrong with that PC, the only thing you're going to do, take out the hard drive, bring the new PC, plug the hard drive back in, and your robot is back up and running. So that is going to be a huge plus for the maintenance. Another thing that's happening, so the cabinet I'm talking about is KLC5. They are already out there. They are making them. So the current robots can already work with those, but the big update that's coming is coming a little bit farther along, and it's going to be a change into KUKA KIOS. So it's a new operating system that KUKA is going to use. It's going to be Linux based. There'll be still a Windows application, but the entire interface is going to change. The entire pendant is going to be changed, and according to their website, you'll be able to also use your custom tablets to connect to their pendant. So I'm not quite sure how that's going to work, but that's something that they mention. So basically, they are coming up with the whole entire system is going to be new, and they are also coming up with a new software that's going to be more like a RoboGuide. So for the KUKA users that used before KUKA Sim, Office Lite, and Work Visual to make simulation and programming, right now everything will be combined into one software, and they'll be able to use one software to do all of that. So I'm very excited about this. I want to see how that is going to play out. Plus, they are really improving the iOS in terms of being able to make quick changes on the robot, because that's something that's also KUKA was not really best at when it comes to making changes onto the robot. They are making the HMI much more user-friendly.
Okay. No, Vlad.
I was gonna say it's interesting that they're making such drastic changes, and I would almost be skeptical to think that the only reason is the ISO. I'm assuming there's other market pressures, that are making them, I guess,
Of course.
implement all of that. But it's super interesting. Yeah, it's a good thing, I guess, for us.
One more thing, sorry, Dave. I
Sure.
would add, for those of who work with KUKA for a long time, they know that last time they did that change, it wasn't the greatest. So let's hope this time they will do it correct.
Okay. I like it. I like it. We will have an update as to how those changes look in the future. I just want to touch on, before we move on to the next topic, some of the ISO changes on the Cobot
Yep.
side. And Pavel, I think you had brought up, and I'm going to go summarize everything that I kind of sort of know about it, is that similar to how it should have always been in the past, a Cobot in and of itself is not intrinsically safe, and that the application in and of itself has to be safe. And so I imagine that we will see more potential guarding around some of those cobots. And more so being, we can't have a cobot with a flamethrower or juggling knives or chainsaws or something like that and say it's okay because it's a cobot. Pablo, from your side, is there anything else kind of worth touching on? Any trends that you expect to see on the cobot side, or is it still a little too early to tell what that's actually going to mean for most groups?
Yes. So if we touch the ISO itself, I think the change is very positive. It's going to throw off a little bit the marketing people selling the Cobots as like a universal tool where you can mount anything on it. But I think an interesting topic for me is we have the Cobots, but at the same time we have the rise of the humanoid robots, which in theory are kind of big Cobots. So I'm kind of interested how the market of the Cobot is going to react to those robots. Let's put everything aside and let's think only that the price is going to be the same as they say. So like the humanoid robot will be somewhere between 20,000 US dollars. Assuming that's true, let it be even 40,000 US dollars. Then when you compare the price of the Cobot to that robot and the capabilities of the Cobot versus of that humanoid robot, I'm very interested how that market is going to react.
And speaking, I guess, maybe of humanoids, to make that transition as well and to ask you a question, right? So it almost seems to me that a lot of times they are pitched as something that can be extremely versatile, right? It can move boxes during the day. It can go, I don't know, retrieve raw ingredients for another hour. It can go maybe to the cafeteria, start making lunch. My question for you, Pavel, is like, what are realistic use cases for the humanoids, at least in the industrial space, right? Like, let's put aside maybe other industries, and like, what do you see them tangibly being good? I would say better at than the current robotic arms.
So I think there are two factors that I would kind of would like to talk about. Number one
Mhm.
is it's just the case of how much work and how much money do we need to put in to automate the station. So maybe a good case would be a question that I got asked some times ago. So I was at the conference and I was speaking with customers, I was talking with people, and a lady approached to me and she asked, "Hey, I heard that you do robotic integrations. We have that case that we have a factory where we have workers that manually separate the deal. So there is a tray. The deal comes in like as a bunch. The worker has to separate the deal, weight, let's say 100 grams, put it on the tray, and then the tray is being sent away. We would like to
Mhm.
automate this process. So now if we think about automating this process, when it comes to like putting an industrial robot in or trying to automate it using some SCADA robots or maybe it's just some servo drives that can pick and place, that is going to be quite expensive because the floor has to be prepared. Maybe the factory is not ready. Maybe there is no foundation on the floor. Maybe you cannot drill into the hole, into the floor, and so on. So the cost of making something, making like the factory that's not prepared for automation, getting it ready for automation is going to be significant, and probably is going to cost a few $100,000. And then even if that humanoid robot is going to cost you $50,000, it's going to be way cheaper than trying to implement an industrial solution. Of course, when it comes to being able to output high quantity, so if you need to make 1,000 of the trades, let's say per second, yeah, then you have to go with the industrial solution. But what she was trying to do, she was just trying to replace the workers with another solution and put the workers somewhere else. But the yield was not big enough to justify the case of using an automation because the cost was so high that it will basically never pay back, right? The ROI was so high that you were unable to get the money back. So that's the first case. And the second case is, I think it's kind of linked to the first one. I think this will open eyes into automating a lot of things that are not automated yet. I don't know if you remember, but in my previous previous podcast, I mentioned that everything can be automated, but not everything is worth automating. And I think that's what the humanoid robots are going to bridge.
So they're basically, you're saying they're going to lower the cost to automate certain processes, correct? No.
Yes, that's correct.
It's interesting. Like, again, I think because there are, I would say, at the current state, so few cases of companies actually succeeding at very specific tasks, it's going to be very difficult for a manager in in one of these companies to say, hey, we've put together a business case that addresses the scenario. Here's the full breakdown of the costs, but also of the opportunities. It almost seems like it's going to have to be some, I want to say, bleeding edge companies that sort of throw the money and then see what could be done before the rest can, so to speak, adopt this new technology. But I guess that's just it's the usual cycle, but I think the investment is still quite substantial, right? We're not talking about, I don't know, a different PLC or a different vision system that is a couple $100 to a couple $1,000. We're talking about, I think they're going to probably come out, and I don't know what your opinion is on this, closer to the 60 to 80K range once they're kind of like mass market ish. So, but it's going to be interesting to see for sure.
Yeah, definitely. One more thing that I would say, the videos that we see on the internet and basically the way how they're advertised, I think they're maybe not addressing the best markets. There is a very, very long way, and I think before we're going to see them in the automation or like in the different industries, because there is so many gaps to bridge, like for even safety, right? Like how they are going to make them safe to work around humans without guarding. Then how you're going to stop it, how you're going to charge it, and so on. Like how do you make sure that maybe it's explosion proof, because that's the environment it works in. There is a lot of questions and a lot of areas that has to be addressed before they go farther. But I had the opportunity to see them in person, actually working, and I think it is very impressive what they are capable of and what they can do. So I think we should wait and see how everything progresses. There are, of course, areas where they won't change, right? Like I don't see someone changing industrial robots for a humanoid just because of the speed. Basically, the physics won't allow for it, right? Like the industrial robot can carry 200 kilograms spot weld gun from point A to point B in blink of an eye. But like the humanoid robot will never be able to do that because it has to be anchored to the ground. Otherwise, the inertia will just throw him off, right? But yeah, I think we have to wait and see how everything progresses in that topic.
I would say, Pavel, the other comment, I guess before I let Dave jump in, let me The comment I would make is, and you brought this point, off stream, is the fact that it seems currently humanoid robots are not as well advertised in the industrial space, right? And it's seen as, this pseudo iRobot type of a solution where, it takes care of your kids, it cooks and cleans, it, I guess, handles the day-to-day tasks. But I think in the industrial space, right, and this is also, I guess, to some extent, a prisoner's dilemma where they need more data probably to see some of these solutions and how they succeed or fail in order to improve, the firmware and obviously the hardware and the software. But ultimately, the industrial space is very secretive as well, as you know, and it's going to be, I think, a challenge for the humanoids. So I wonder, do
Yes.
you have any comments like on that side as well?
Yeah, I guess everyone that works in manufacturing and the industrial space, I think the thinking is pretty dated back. So a lot of people are still thinking like old times, and I don't think there is a mind shift that allows them to think, okay, how can I use this application, or like how it's going to be used in the future to prepare
Hmm.
my workspace for it. Because in the end, like you have to prepare the workspace for what's coming, right? Even if that's someone that's designing a factory or designing a line, if it has workers, but it's supposed to have robots later on, it has to be designed to help that. And I think with the humanoid robots, it's kind of the same. Once they are actually, working and we can kind of study them, then we know how to design our environment to make them more and more efficient.
Yeah, makes sense. Dave, what are your thoughts?
Interesting. Yeah, I guess, Pablo, I've got a couple of questions for you on the humanoid side. One, what do you think the time frame is until we start seeing maybe not even just early adoption, but kind of like mass adoption on the humanoid side? Do you think it's 5 years? Do you think it's 15 years? How long do you think it'll take until the humanoids have made enough changes and have continued to get good enough, and the world has changed enough to allow humanoids robots to kind of exist in our day-to-day life, be it industrial or maybe a different application that is not industrial?
I think it's a very hard question to answer, but it's kind of like with the AI, right? When the AI was introduced to like a wider public, it was not very known before, but it could do what it could do at the moment it was introduced. And then as it was introduced and people started using it and learning about it, there was a exponential growth in the abilities of AI, and it's still happening. So I think it's kind of the same. So it's going very slow right now, but once they're introduced, I think it's going to be quite quick. I think in the next 5 years, we're going to see a big change. That will be my estimate. Like looking at what happened to AI, I think the humanoid robots is not something that just show up yesterday. People have been working on them and planning that for years already, right? Just we
Hmm.
didn't know they were not available to public. So now, because of the growth of the AI and because of the new technologies and a lot of changes in robotics, I think it's going to be much sooner than we think. And the first use cases we're going to see in the next 5 years, and from then on, I don't know. It might be the next 2 years. Everyone is going to have a robot, right? Maybe they're going to test it, and it turns out, okay, it's not what we expected, and like they're going to be used just for manufacturing or some other industrial areas.
Mhm. Absolutely. I think it'll be interesting to see, and I just want everyone, especially our new listeners, to know that I'm still not a fan of robots that have faces, or eyes, or places that they should have eyes but don't have eyes. Not a fan of any of those. Having said that, Pavel, for people who are fans of humanoid robots, you made an interesting comment. Is that after having some conversations, after seeing some of these in action, you feel like the marketing may not be what is best for like some of the applications, and you had some ideas of applications that you think they may fit very well. Can you tell us a couple of those applications, a couple of those ideas kind of churning in your head of, if you, Pavel, were in charge of the entire roadmap of all of the humanoids, this is where you would focus, these are the applications you would focus on?
Sure. Uh, I think I wouldn't say application wise. Definitely, Pig and Place is the application that they have been designed to. But I think nobody's thinking about, like the industrial robots has been introduced to also take away any of the potential dangers for the humans, right? So like spot welding before, you have a spot welding gun that generates, let's say if you're welding aluminum, is going to generate 10 kiloamps that will flow through the gun, and all of the electromagnetic is going to hit your body, right? That's why you put it on an industrial robot. So when you do it, basically it won't harm you. Like if you would if you held your keys next to the weld gun as it's welding, it is going to pull that key towards the electrodes. And I think that will be the spaces where we as humans are limited with what we can do because it's too dangerous for us to explore. But now we send the humanoid robots, which is just made out of parts, and let's say radiation doesn't affect them, let's say. So then you can do much more robust testing and much more quicker testing than we're used to. And that will speed up some new developments. So that will be like for the application. But I think it's more about showing that, hey, we can do this now much cheaper and much faster than before. So like the deal factory that I gave you an idea about, I think those should be the cases that like, okay, it was not possible to automate it before, but now you guys can automate it. So that'll be more on the marketing side. And yeah, I think that will be my input.
Absolutely. I think it's interesting. And my guess, my best guess when it comes to technology adoption is that when the technology has kind of hit the point of actual adoption, we're going to find users are using them for completely different applications than what some of the designers have designed for them and around. So I am excited to see what that is, especially with like the nuclear radiation and those comments. That seems like an easy win. It seems like if those were commercially viable at that point, that absolutely someone should have made a call to another person and gone to get some of those. So I think that there are certainly on the hazardous side. It would be interesting to see if we could have something like that work, because there are a lot of hazardous jobs, and more of the hazardous jobs people are not particularly interested in doing. So it'll be interesting to see where we go from there. Vlad, any last thoughts on the humanoids?
No, I guess I did want to transition to AI because Pavel did bring up AI. I think it is very relevant, I would say, to the humanoids, but also to the traditional market as well. And I know we penciled in vision as the topic of focus, but I did want to ask, I guess, a broader question before we dive into the vision side, right? Because ultimately, AI seemingly, at least for me, is impacting a lot of my workflow, a lot of like different software programming tools. And I think on robotics, it could be even greater than that, right? Like we mentioned, optimizing paths and figuring out some CAD models versus like what's in reality. So I'm curious, in the broad sense of AI, besides the chat bots that you can query and ask for, hey, I want to buy a robot, what could you recommend? What are some practical, maybe AI use cases that you're seeing on the market?
I think the biggest change that happened is because of the AI, a lot of people that were not familiar with the robots now can get an idea and work on it. So in terms of the changes, I think, again, I will go back into data collection and data analysis. I think they allow to find the trends much faster than human would, or some other systems that you have can do. That'll be for like the application perspectives. But again, I think the biggest thing that I really like is more and more people are reaching out and asking questions. Hey, can the robot do X, Y, Z? Because I would like I would like it to do that, and like I think it's possible. And then finding a new solution or writing a piece of code has been now much easier and can be executed much faster.
Interesting. And I guess when you say that, I'm assuming there's still some guardrails in place because of the industrial nature for some of these robots, right? I'm assuming that people are a bit more cautious than, hey, just generate me code that moves something from A to B. and it just simply works? Like, I guess, like, how is that like evolving or changing, or as you said, allowing maybe more people to get more experience with robots?
Yeah, so I think it's more about letting them know how to approach the application. So
Okay.
if you would like to do something, let's say pick and place a piece from point A to point B, uh, even with the chatbots, if you ask how to do it, they will kind of tell you what's needed, and that gives you an application, an idea of, okay, what else can I do with that robot if he's able to do to that, and do I need to buy something else, or maybe that's enough. And people will reach out to me with like, ideas. Okay, hey, I heard this is possible. How can I do it? And I think it's kind of moving a lot of people that were not familiar with automation and robotics into being more automation and robotics friendly.
Gotcha. Do you see anything on the edge processing side? So Dave and I looked at a few solutions that automate where, basically they're utilizing edge with paired GPUs, right, for, machine vision or analyzing the data coming out of the robot. Is there anything that's, I guess, like done differently now, or I guess like more feasible now with quote unquote AI that wasn't possible, I don't know, 2, 3 years ago?
Honestly, I'm not sure. Uh,
Yeah.
the current robots were not prepared for AI, I think. So whatever they are giving us is not very useful. Again, the new cabinets that will come out, both for Fanuc and
Mhm.
KUKA, are claimed to be AI ready, which we're not sure what that means. But I think we have to wait a little bit for that shift to see how much of an improvement we're going to get out of them being able to produce some data that's going to be useful to train some language models.
Understood. Dave, what are your thoughts?
Yeah, I was in fact going to ask Pavel if he thought that some of those updates on the new cabinets and controllers and updates coming out are to go leverage that. I I think it'll be interesting. I guess for our listeners who are joining us for robotics, Vlad and I previously episodes 212 and 213 had a couple of conversations surrounding AI, and I think it's interesting. I think that you certainly see more and more of these AI powered vision cameras, robots hooked up to different applications. I think we are, as we've talked about vision in the past, as we've talked about a lot of these applications in the past, we're taking some of the I'll call it artistry out of the 2,000 hours of programming it takes to go get some of these things correct. And so I see going and speeding up these processes make a lot of sense. We see a lot of Universal Robotics robots being leveraged with those vision systems. Now, if that's just because they're on the trade show floor and because it's easy to do, that may be the case, or maybe those guys are leading the way in going and having that information and those open APIs to allow that to go be created. So, having said that, I think it's interesting what we're going to see on the AI side and what AI tools are going to win. I certainly imagine similar to the humanoids that will have applications that people are leveraging AI and vision and other opportunities on the robotic side that none of us who have been in industry for years would have ever considered because we've never done it that way. Why would we go do it some completely different way? So I think it'll be very interesting, and I'd imagine if we have this conversation in a year or 2 years, the answers would be very different. The examples that we can go point at would be very different.
Yeah.
But going maybe off of the AI and talking more about those vision systems on the robotic side, because I feel like it's a good example. And it's a little bit of a cop out of an example, right? Because we've been doing it for several years and they continue to get better and better. But what are you seeing, Pavel? Like, how quickly are these solutions coming out? Are they getting exponentially better? Tell us your thoughts on the landscape of this,
Sure,
please.
sure. So actually, my first time I've seen a AI vision application was probably 1.5 years ago in a trade show in
Mhm.
Santa Clara. Uh,
Oh, Might have lost him.
I was gonna say, we've got a pause for him, and now we see his background. We'll go ahead and give him an opportunity to go ahead and jump back on.
Yep.
Okay.
But I just kind of talked a little bit about those applications. What are your thoughts when it comes to the vision applications? Are you seeing more use of them? Or maybe the better question is, you as Vlad, who has done some amount of vision system work, would you feel comfortable with some of these AI powered tools going and deploying the system with you being as the potential subject matter expert? Do you think they're that good?
So look, from the demos that I've seen and the conversations that I've had, ultimately vision is one of those areas, and it looks like we have Pavel reconnecting back on, so we can put him back there.
There you go.
Dave was asking me, I guess, about my opinion on AI vision, right? And maybe I'll give Pavel a couple of seconds to reconnect. But long story short, the biggest challenge for me in vision is the ability to configure a system and tweak it to a point where you basically don't have false positives or I guess like false negatives, right? So you don't want to reject product that is good, and you don't want to let through product that is bad. And so a lot of engineering hours are spent in tweaking, I guess, the system back and forth to reach that happy medium. So any solution that helps us get us there closer is absolutely welcome. So I've seen nothing but, again, like amazing results from AI where at the end it just requires a very, very small tweak. Of course, I would say the other caveat to that is usually the models seem to be much slower than the traditional programming, right? So if you have, let's say, a feature that you're looking for on your specific product that you're looking to pass or fail, or for example, measure, right? So if I take, I don't know, let's say something as simple as a pen, and I'm trying to pass or fail based on the length, and there's enough variation, but that's all I'm doing. A traditional tool might be easier to implement and much faster than what AI is capable of. So I think it's a very good step in the right direction. I think it's different applications than, again, high speed packaging that I've been involved in. And so I think in the applications where it's quality inspections and something maybe on the slower side, AI definitely shines. Hey, Pavel.
Yes, I'm sorry, guys. Small technical issues.
Not a problem.
All right. So I'm not sure what. Yeah. Go ahead.
No, I was gonna say I was telling Dave, I guess like my thoughts on AI, and I think in vision, especially the biggest bottleneck is the engineering hours spent trying to tweak the system where it's rejecting the right parts and it not letting through the parts that need to be rejected, right? And so anything that helps us, I guess, shorten that huge engineering time is absolutely welcome. So.
Yes, exactly. So that was the thing I wanted to mention. So when I first saw that AI vision at the trade show, I wasn't really sure what does it mean, right? And then I had the chance to actually test this system in person by myself. And that system and other systems I tested, the biggest advantage is definitely implementation time. So when it comes to a classic machine vision, you really need to spend a lot of time first choosing the right camera, choosing the right lighting, taking a look at your environment, making sure that the environment is also user-friendly for the camera itself, and then spending time tuning in the model that you want to look at. And those would take really, let's say, hundreds of hours. But with those AI systems, basically, they kind of eliminate that. They'll come, you show them either the CAD or you show them what you want to allocate, and they'll tell you, okay, yeah, we can do it. And then setting up the system will take you, let's say, half an hour, maybe 1 hour. So basically, it's kind of like the Cobots that bridge the issue of robot programming. So they did the drag and drop solution where you move the robot, drag and drop a command logic, and the robot will execute it. That's what the AI kind of bridge. So the lack of the knowledge of the vision system and lack of knowing how to set it up, right now you just take it, drag and drop, okay, the vision system is ready to be used. Of course, you still need to know how to program the robot, but that right now is significantly easier than trying to do it before.
Yeah, and I would say, like, for me, a huge deal was also variations between different SKUs of the same product, right? So if you have something a little bit bigger or a little bit smaller or slightly different, it was impossible to, I guess, avoid creating multiple jabs and going through the same exact process of setting it up for, that specific SKU. Whereas now with AI, it learns through the images that you send through, and if it's a small variation in the product, it's usually not a problem. And we've seen that again in the examples that we even saw with Siemens, where it has absolutely no issues. If it's a box, if it's a tube, if it's a different container, it's able to pick that up and understand you're looking to move that from container A to container B. So I think it's super interesting for sure. Let me ask you, I guess, like, you talked a little bit on the implementation side, right? That it is much shorter. I've personally not seen, what is the actual UI, or I guess, like, if I'm a software engineer trying to deploy this vision system, what does the process actually look like? Am I just uploading images to it? Am I scanning the line with it? Am I, tweaking? Like, what is it like? Have you seen what the process actually looks like? And I know you have a couple of videos on your channel doing that, so I want you
Yep.
to elaborate a bit.
Sure. Yeah, so definitely for those who would like to get a little bit more in depth, I have one system that I tested, and there is a whole UI showed how it works.
Yep.
Now, when it comes to those systems, me personally, I've seen from all of the ones I tested, two types. One of them works where you have the CAD model, you feed the CAD model to the AI, well, the vision system, the AI vision system, and based on that CAD model, the camera is able to spot that item when it's within the field of view of the camera. And the second system that I tested, the one that I have actually on my channel, is a little bit different. So that is where you present the object you're trying to locate to the camera. So in my case, I had my USB stick that I brought with me, and I put it in front of the camera, and then the robot has motions that it's doing to kind of create the model for what you're looking for, and then based on what it's going to be taught, it's going to locate that object. And to be honest, I was quite impressed because the learning didn't take too much. Like the whole process of presenting the object to the camera and scanning it took maybe 5 minutes, maybe less. Then the AI computing takes a lot of time, but that's done kind of offline. So you don't have to worry about it. Basically, you present the object and then AI does its thing. And afterwards, basically, you have the model ready. So that took probably an hour, maybe hour and a half. But you can use the robot normally. Like, it happens in the cloud. You don't have to be there. So those were the two different solutions. And
Gotcha.
probably each of them, has pros and cons. I think the biggest pros is both of them are super easy. Like, it's all user based, like drag and drop. So like, you just say, okay, teach the model next. In case of the one that I tested, the robot does the movements. Okay, scanning done. Compute the data. Computes the data. You wait. Okay, that data has been computed. The model is ready to use. In case of the one that I tested with CAD, is the same, but you're not scanning the object. You're uploading the CAD, and then the CAD is being used in the model. So you select, okay, new vision process, you upload the CAD, processing, done.
Do you think all of, I guess, when I had just gotten into vision systems on the Cognex side, and this is 2015, 2016-ish, basically at that time they had introduced what's called Easy Builder, right? And that was the successor to spreadsheet programming. And when I was trained on quote unquote vision systems, I was pretty much told, like, look, spreadsheets are still being used in the field, but you should make everything an easy builder, and then you can, under the hood, go in and tweak what's being done in spreadsheets. So let's say now, if I were building an application, I guess, that is not AI enabled, with some of the, I still have some cameras from that time, but basically spreadsheets were obsolete and everything was started in Easy Builder regardless. So my question maybe for you, Pawel, is, do you see a need for non-AI applications in the, I guess, vision system space, or everything's going to be started with AI, and then if you absolutely have some niche type of a high speed maybe application that does something very specific, then maybe you need to switch to the older tools. But everything as a standard will pretty much become AI.
I think currently AI is not really capable of doing some type of detections. At least, again, the systems I work with,
Hmm.
I don't know, I don't know what's under the hood. But I was under the impression the only thing that happens is cloud-based environment is being used, and basically you're generating a model that the AI is looking at through its volume, right? So if you
Okay.
upload the CAD, it's a cloud point, and basically then you're trying to locate this cloud point in the field of view of the camera. Now, if, for example, you're presenting it a hinge, and then you presented the same hinge with 2 bolts in it, I think it won't be able to detect the difference between the hinge with bolts and the hinge without the bolts, because
Mm,
perhaps the volume change is not significant enough for it to see something. And I
gotcha.
think that's something that probably is going to be solved in the future. So if I look at those systems right now, one is of course speed, because you need time to find the object. The more features you're looking for, the faster CPU you need. That's why probably a lot of those, like you gave the example of Cognex, right? Most of the Cognex cameras have everything in them, right? You buy the camera and that's all you had.
Yep.
That's all you need to have, right? If you buy a
Hmm.
Keyence camera, for example, or at least that used to be the case, you need to buy the Keyence camera and the processor. Does it allow you to make the pictures faster and do more filtering? Yes. But maybe you don't need it. Maybe you need a simple, cheaper camera that can do everything under the hood. You don't need special PC. But all of the AI visions will require you to purchase special PC because they need to compute all of that data. And it is going to directly influence how fast those vision systems are. They are still very fast.
Hmm.
The computing is very fast, but when it comes to like inspection, I think it's not there yet. That's why like the
Gotcha.
classic machine vision is still going to play a big role in the industry, and like you mentioned, the high-speed applications.
Do you need the PC to run the model constantly, or it's just to compute the initial setup?
I think so. Again, like I don't know what's happening under the hood. I know that most of the systems will have. It's not a PC, right? It's like a small dedicated box.
Sure.
Like, so don't
Yep.
think of it like as a desktop. It's like a small piece of equipment which has a processor, probably some GPU. Uh, so it's running when the robot is running. But I think what happens is you will generate the model. That model is going to be stored probably somewhere locally, and then you're just trying to find that model, right? So like the computing is one thing, but then the process probably is using a little bit different approach.
Understood. Dave, thoughts?
I think it's interesting. I think it's one of those that we could definitely go for like hours and hours talking about. But we have a new segment that Vlad would like to go kick off with Pavel
Yeah.
on Manufacturing Hub. And we have hit the time to go ask the new segment.
All right.
I'd like everyone listening to know how excited Vlad is and how maybe surprised he was that I have now teed him up to go ask this. So, Vlad, why don't you go? Why don't you go kick off this new the new segment that we want to try?
Absolutely. So Pavel and I ultimately had multiple conversations, when it comes to the startup scene and the general, I would want to say, landscape of our space and other verticals for that matter. And so I thought the interesting question to ask Pavel would be, ask him essentially any ideas when it comes to maybe startups, or if you were launching your own venture, whether that's in robotics, in the industrial space, on the software, perhaps on the hardware side, what would be some of those ideas? And obviously, it would be interesting to discuss them as well.
Sure. Yeah, I still would say that probably, again, it's going to be my personal opinion, like what I think is interesting. But for me, definitely analyzing data and improving the process. So everything that will be able to tell you, okay, you're doing this like that, but perhaps if you change it, you're going to improve your OEE, right? So in
Hmm.
my case, for example, robotics, when we talk about motion planning and making robots move faster, in the industrial space, sometimes on the programmed line, getting a 1 or 2 seconds out of cycle time, it might be a lot. It might require hundreds, or maybe not hundreds, but like a lot of hours trying to find that 1 or 2 seconds. So now if someone will give me a solution and say, okay, you place a camera, we're going to record your process, and that process now is going to be analyzed by AI, and AI will tell you, okay, if you open this clamp maybe later, maybe earlier, then the entire process is going to be improved. I think that will be something that will be very interesting. Like one of the things I really like to do in robotics is cycle time optimization and process optimization. So quality and process. So anything that'll be linked to this, or when we talk about the quality, mount the camera on the robot. So those solutions are already there. Mount the camera on the robot and see what the robot is doing, and tell me what I might be doing wrong, right? So if you're doing a MIG welding or laser brazing, or maybe applying adhesive, there are already applications that allow you to do inspections, and some of them allows you for the correction of the robot path or robot program. But getting that insight, so like imagine you have a MIG welding application, and you have a camera that's able to capture the live process, let's say in slow motion, and it can tell you how the wire is melting, and can analyze, okay, maybe if you increase the wire speed, I know based off my models that this might improve your welding speed. Like let's say you put a little bit more wire, a little bit higher amperage, and then you'll be able to go 2 millimeters faster. I think this is something that I'm personally interested in, and that's something I would like to see.
Let me, I guess, like try to dig into that a little bit deeper, and I'm sure Dave would have some thoughts on that as well. But first question, on the first idea, I guess in my mind, I would need to know maybe the signals, right, of the, I guess, the PLC that's bringing in the product or whatever the control system is, plus the robotic side. But you're suggesting that with a, I guess, vision based or some kind of a recording system, you should be able to optimize the path and, I guess, the behavior of the robot.
So yes, when I
Okay.
do a lot of cycle time optimization, I can do a lot just by looking at the system.
Mm-hmm.
Like I want to give up too much, but sometimes slowing down the robot makes the line faster. And you can spot it on the just looking at the camera, because you can analyze the entire, you cannot look at the system as one entity. You have to look at it as a group, right? Whatever is in there that works together, you have to understand how it works, and that will allow you to analyze, okay, what can I do for this entire system, for this entire ecosystem to work faster together. uh,
Hmm.
and that's why I think you might be able to get quite a lot just by looking at the process itself.
That's interesting, right? Because ultimately you have a lot of years of experience in that, so you can probably look at it and say what can be optimized. But I don't know. I have doubts about, I guess, AI. But that would be the solution, right? That's why it's a hard problem to solve. I guess the quote unquote AI that's processing those images needs to somehow get your knowledge into a model and figure out like what can be changed or what could be tweaked. It is an interesting problem, right? And as you said, I think it's also from a financial standpoint really interesting, because you could say, hey, I don't know, this movement takes 10 seconds. If we move it down to 9 seconds, that's 10% improvement, which results in, I don't know, $20 per package, but over a year that's a whole lot of money, right? So you could easily calculate the ROI in that specific instance. Dave, what are your thoughts on the ideas?
I agree. I think, and I suppose we haven't really dove super deep into like the last 2 to 5% of process optimizations on Manufacturing Hub, because the sort of groups who will find money in the last 2 to 5% of process optimizations are not the majority of the small to medium sized manufacturing organizations who generally listen to us. Having said that, I think that there is a very interesting series of opportunities in going after the enterprise last 2 to 5% of those optimizations. Some friends of the show, and I don't know if I can go talk about the previous positions, but some friends of the show that I know have been part of startups that were looking like 1/4%, right? Like 1/4% of additional throughput is worth $1 billion, or is worth $500 million to one particular organization. So going and looking that is certainly very interesting. as to if that is a internal within the company, this is how we're doing it, or as to if there is an external, we don't have the contacts within this company, but we're going to go after the enterprises that the last 5% or less is worth this much money, and they have struggled enough to come to us, is a completely different question, and that is certainly not a question that I have cracked in the past. I do think it's very interesting, and it's almost refreshing to go from one side of the conversation of, hey, we've never seen a robot before, and maybe we should put guarding around our cobot that is, juggling chainsaws, versus this side of the conversation in which we're talking about, the last 0.25% or the last 5%. So I certainly think that that's very interesting. And would love to go talk about more of those applications on the show. If you guys are part of an internal team doing that, we would love to go have a conversation as to what that looks like and what the metrics look like on that. So thank you very much. Having said that, let's go ask you the last questions we ask all of our guests, Pawel. And the first one, the first one for non-long-time viewers is one of my most favorite. It's predict the future, and we ask all of our guests to go have fun with it. Having said that, I feel like, Pawel, you have walked yourself into go predict the future of any and every type of robot that exists in the industrial space. But for you, go give us a future of the industrial space and robotics in the next 2 to 3 years, please.
I would like to say maybe more than 2 and 3 years. Like, what I would envision is industrial robots and the humanoids robots working together as one ecosystem. So now, right now, all of the robots have to be guarded, right? So like you have the industrial robots working in a cell, and they're performing an application. And if you need to do maintenance on them, or you need to do anything else that requires touching the robots or the station, you have to follow the lockout, tagout procedures, go in, stop the line, and so on. But now, if you have a industrial robot and a humanoid robot, and then they can talk to each other, because even right now, you're able to know exactly where the robot model is in space, and I'm quite sure you know where the humanoid robot can be in space. If you're able to join them together onto one solution, so imagine a robot is working, and at the same time, a humanoid robot is going to do some maintenance actions on it, of course, if it's possible, because it knows its motions. Like the AI model taught itself, okay, it always moves like this. So now it's able to go in, stand in a place where it won't be hit, and do something else. I think that's something I would like to see.
Okay. Interesting. I think that would certainly be very interesting to see, as to the amount of programming and effort it takes to go get those dependency to a point of, I can have one robot that has every access that exists in the humanoid of being able to go and do and work on and change my 5, 6, 7, 8 access robots. That it would be interesting to see. I feel like when people think of manufacturing, they think of the movies in which it's completely lights out and we've got a humanoid robot going and changing things, and we just have I don't know, perfectly packaged Lego blocks falling off the end of the line perfectly in a box, and there's no human that touches it. So I think it's a step in that direction. As to what it's going to take to get there, that was not the question. So thank you for that, Pawel. But I do want, talking about robots, we want to go talk about career advice. And typically when we talk about career advice, we go talk about if people are looking to go get in kind of early to mid-career. I know that you've got your own YouTube channel in which you do some of that teaching and training. Can you go maybe talk a little bit about what you're doing on YouTube? And can you go talk a little bit about what sort of advice you give on that channel, please?
Sure. So as I mentioned at the beginning, my YouTube channel is mainly educational. So I'm just trying to teach what I was not able to grasp when I started, right? Because there was really no trainings. There were only manuals that will allow you to get a knowledge regarding robotics, and a lot of stuff is not being even said in those books. So I'm just trying to share what I learned, So for someone that wants to start that career path, so it will be a little bit easier for them, or even those that are already working in robotics to like expand their knowledge based of what I would like to share with them. As per career advice, I think it changed a lot. I was actually doing a training at my technical school where I graduated from, and I was kind of giving a speech over there. That was a year ago. And then they asked me the same question. And I said, well, whatever you do, looking into AI is a must nowadays. And I think if I were to do something except for whatever you do, is looking into AI and learning at least the basic and understanding how it works, because it is going to become something that is probably going to be attached to everything that we do. So you guys might remember there was like the smart evolution. So we had fridge, we had I don't know, TV at home, we had a phone, and then everything became smart. Smart TV, smart fridge, smart phone, smart house, and so on and so on. And now it's just a normal for us, right? To have a smartphone, to have a smart fridge, whatever you have that's smart. And I think it's kind of the same with the AI, right? The AI just showed up, and it's going to be with us whether we like it or not, and probably it's going to stick for quite a while because it's going to help us with many things. And there's plenty of free courses already online. Google has one, Nvidia has one. I think I haven't tested them yet. I haven't gone through them, but that's my plan for the next few months. So I think if someone wants to go into the robotics space, definitely looking into AI is a must. And then if we talk about classic robotics, I'm talking industrial robots. If someone wants to get into that career, just robotic is not enough. You always need to either understand the applications that the robot are using, so be kind of like an application expert, or ideally know both PLC and robotics. So as you learn, it's good to get the basic understanding of the PLC and the industrial robots.
Yeah.
Absolutely. No, thank you so much. Thank you so much for that, Pavel. Next question we'd like is for a book and or content recommendation. I feel like we have called out the Future Robotics YouTube channel, and we will have a link for all of our listeners and all the folks in the podcast on the show notes. We will make sure to have that link in there. Do you have another book and or content recommendation for us today, please?
Honestly, I don't think I have a specific book because so much knowledge that's needed, it's more of a practical knowledge that I would rather send you guys towards the courses that I mentioned. Like, take a look. If we talk about AI, NVIDIA, Google, there's a lot of plenty free courses. And then the only thing that I really use is just operation manuals that comes with the robots and trying to understand what's written with them. I know that Vlad doesn't like that answer probably, but that's how it works in our industry. I don't know what to tell you guys. There aren't really books that are solely focused on that. And I think it's such a small and like specific niche that it's not worth really maybe I'm not saying, I think maybe that's incorrect statement. It's not that it's not worth. There isn't enough people that will be interested, let's say, in how to do a spot welding on a robot.
Yeah.
I think that's very valid, and you did give us several pieces of content and courses and other things to take a look at. I will say, when we have conversations with folks on the robotics side, and when we have conversations with folks in like the cybersecurity side, and a couple other instances, it is very much the speed at the changes, right? So if Pavel were to start today to go write an update on the KUKA and Fanuc robotic cabinets and controllers that we were talking about earlier, by the time he's done and gets that published, there are probably two other iterations of that out. So the speed in which everything changes does make it hard in some of those instances to have a really good core solid book. And everyone does need that manual because everyone does have to sleep at some point, and they need something around page, I don't know, 800 to fall asleep to. So thank you so much for that, Pavel. And then last question is, how can our listeners help? Who should reach out? Who are you looking to connect with on LinkedIn, anywhere else? Very much kind of your open platform.
Sure. So anyone that is interested in either increasing their knowledge in robotics, or maybe understanding what else they can do with the industrial robots, or if they have never had encounter an industrial robot and would like to implement one, I think those are the people that I'm very welcome to contact me. To give you an example, actually, a lot of people are saying that the remote work for industrial programmers is almost impossible, and I kind of agree with that. But for those who really would like to try industrial robots, I have a customer that I work with. He's from Vietnam. He has never in his life touched an industrial robot, and I work with him already 2 years. And we've implemented together almost 5 projects by now. And I have never been there. I was only able to do everything remotely, tell him how to move the robot, like using my videos. And basically he said, okay, I have this application. I would like to make it work. So I will prepare the simulation, I'll send it to him, and then he's able to implement it by himself. So everything is possible. You just have to ask, even if it sounds a little bit ridiculous.
I think that's very interesting. I think that remote programming on robots, the implementation is the most difficult part. But as they say, where there is a will, there is a way. So, Pawel, thank you guys. Thank you so much for this. Everyone, thank you for joining. If you're watching live, and especially if you're watching on LinkedIn, please go ahead and make sure to connect with Pawel. If you guys are listening on podcast form, we'll make sure to have Pawel's contact information in there. As you're doing that, make sure you're following Vlad and myself and Manufacturing Hub. We'll have new episodes that come out every Wednesday. Next month, we are diving all into data and manufacturing intelligence as a continuation from some of these series of conversations. We will be off, not live, next week for the celebration of Canada Day. That's your holiday, Vlad. And the 4th of July, that's the American holiday just south of Canada. So we'll have some content coming out for you guys then, and we'll be back live on July 8th. If you're watching us live, if you're listening in podcast form, you're absolutely fantastic. We're almost certainly not going to go miss a week, but please do all of those important things like, subscribe, share, rate us 5 stars, follow along. We'll continue to push out new fun podcasts as long as you guys continue to listen. Until next time, we'll